We are now talking to CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports editorial director, Adam Silverstein. Adam, what's up, man?
Hey, not much. Thanks, guys, for having me. You're talking to like 7% of your audience that has the Android devices, though. So the app's working for a very, very small portion.
Listen, I have an Android. I think I would say about 50-50 of my friends have Androids.
Fair enough.
I mean, in America, there are more people that have Androids than they do of Apples. So, I think it's like 70-30 right now of Androids to Apple.
No, that can't be right.
We'll have to look up the number. Speedy,
we'll
look
have
up
to
the
look
number.
That up.
We will. Adam, I got my guy. He'll look it up. We'll get the numbers. And you're a numbers guy. But very happy to have you on. Before we get into it, how are you and your family doing? Happy holidays. How was your Thanksgiving?
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Down here in South Florida, we're all New York transplants down here. I grew up here my entire life. And, normally good holiday season. I'm very heavily involved in the college football world. So we just went through, the conference championship games and we're kind of moving into bowl season. So it went from hectic to slightly more relaxing. So things are going well.
Well, I hear you're a Yankee fan. That's what
I am a Yankee fan. That is true.
How did you like that contract? The Yankees obviously giving Aaron Judge, their captain, will be declared. Yes, he'll be declared their captain. He will. Yeah. Obviously getting the 9-year, $360 million contract. I was one of those guys that did not think he was going back to the Yankees. I've been saying it for 2 years. He shocked me when I heard that this morning. He decided from, obviously, San Francisco and the Yankees, not going home to the Bay Area and staying with the New York Yankees and being the face of the New York Yankees moving forward for the next 9 years.
Well, first of all, we got to shout him out. Greatest contract year in sports history, right? Probably, bar none, I would say. For me, it was always the Giants felt like a little bit of a red herring, something that he was kind of teasing with for negotiation reasons. Ultimately, he wanted to go back to New York. The number is one thing, $360 million, but that $360 million, even though you're going to eat, plenty of taxes in New York City, the value that comes with being a member of the New York Yankees organization, especially as you get into your later years, 36, 37, 38, which unfortunately is not that far off from, there's greater value beyond what the actual numbers in the contract are. As far as the Yankees, you're signing Judge for one reason, and that's to win a World Series. You believe that he can be the centerpiece of your franchise, and you can put enough people around him, enough pieces around him to make yourself a World Series team. The problem is, the Yankees haven't done that in 13 years, and they just re-signed the guy who's orchestrated or put those teams together for 4 more years. I'm much more concerned about giving Brian Cashman a 4-year extension than I am giving, Aaron Judge $40 million a year. Is it a lot of money? It's a lot of money. I'll worry about it 6 years down the line when they try to figure out what the hell they're going to do with the last $120 million over those final 3 years.
Adam, they've been torturing Brian Cashman for the last couple of years. This guy is nothing. He's done nothing but win. Now, obviously, haven't won a championship for 13 years since 2009, and that's understandable. It's not easy to win World Series.
Absolutely.
They're very hard to win. And with being that you're in the American League, you're in the American League East, you're playing the Blue Jays about 16 times a year, you're playing the Red Sox 15 times a year, and the Tampa Bay Rays and then the Orioles are getting better. This is the hardest division in baseball. So I understand what you're saying. Brian Cashman is a winner. He was a guy that George Steinbrenner handpicked. Now, everybody says the game has gone past him. I don't believe that. Derek Jeter, who I'm not a big fan of, but he has come out and said that the game has not passed him. As a matter of fact, the game has really changed and transcended through him and what he has done for the game and really where the game is going. And really, Brian Cashman was the one that really transitioned the relief, the bullpen, building the bullpen, the 8 or 9 guys in the bullpen. And that's what has built, the Mariano Riveras of the world, the Wetlands and all the guys at Nelsons and Stantons and all the guys that have been in the bullpen for years. And now even with the bullpen, which, by the way, was hurt in the second half of the season. This was the number one bullpen in all of baseball. It wasn't even close. And then in the second half, they were dealing with injuries, and they fell apart. And you saw that in the playoffs. So I don't understand. I want to know your take on why you think Brian Cashman shouldn't have gotten an extension for 4 years.
Well, a lot of what you kind of gave as proof of Cashman succeeding was 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14 years ago at this point. And it really becomes a question of what have you done for me lately? And the Yankees have built They claim to have built this fantastic analytics department, but they can't win 2 games against the Astros when it actually matters, right? They claim that they have all these correct pieces within their scouting organization, and yet when it comes to the trade deadline, they can't figure out the right pieces, or Brian Cashman can't figure out the right pieces to add to the team to actually make them a World Series contender. Do I think Brian Cashman shouldn't work in baseball anymore? No, I'm not saying that. But at some point, when your tenure with a team stops becoming fruitful, you don't have the same level of success that you used to, it may be best for all parties to switch. And you have to look at, well, what was Cashman doing under George, and what's Cashman doing now under Hal? And the restrictions, look, the Yankees still spend a ton of money. I'm not saying they don't, but there's still restrictions that Hal is putting on him from a budgetary standpoint that are not allowing him to perhaps do some of the things that he's done best in the past. So, I appreciate, as someone who is a Yankee supporter and has been my entire life, I appreciate everything that Brian Cashman has done for the organization, but I haven't seen the fruits of that labor recently. And it's been a very long period of time. A couple of years, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you're not getting to the ALCS or whatever. It's been 13 years since they have not been back to the World Series. And in many of those seasons, you could never really say they're the favorites to go this year. Oh, they just slipped up. They lost in 7 games in the ALCS. They got blown out by the Astros this year, and it's happened before. So that's where we get to the point where we say, Brian Cashman, thanks a lot. It's been great. We need to go in a different direction.
So the Judge contract itself, 9 years, definitely something longer than expected for a guy who's 31 years old. Are you surprised that the Yankees matched that offer with the Giants and did that? And do you think, is that something that would go exception of the rule of what Brian Cashman and Hal Steinbrenner are the restrictions you said? Is that the exception to that?
It seems to be. And the question is, does that now hamstring them going forward, right? They say, okay, we're going to spend the money on Judge, but now you don't have this 10 or 20 or 30 million that you were otherwise going to get to spend on these players. I think the Yankees had to re-sign Judge. Judge had to re-sign with the Yankees. I believe it was always going to happen. He and his agent just played it perfectly. He got the years he wanted. He got the money he wanted. Now it's, how do you make it work? Do I think it was a little bit too much? Yeah, but I think all of these contracts are too much. Like Justin Verlander getting $43 million a year. All these other guys getting massive, massive contracts for a sport that, the money must still be there, and the TV rights, I guess, keep going up because live sports is the one thing that still generates revenue through television, right? But you look at these contracts and the way they balloon year after year after year. If you're going to give $40 million a year to anyone, it's a guy who came 5 points within a Triple Crown, right? He came that freaking close, and he has the ability to maybe not perform at that same level for the next 9 years, but probably for the next 4 or 5. That's the guy you give that kind of contract to.
Very interesting. As everybody knows, we are talking to CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports editorial director Adam Silverstein. The Yankees, I do believe, are still in it for Rendon. A lot of people think that they are. They're the favorites of getting him. I do believe that he grew up a Pinstripe fan. I don't know if that's going to sell to him. If the Yankees wanted 5 years, $36 million instead of 6 or 7, I do believe he's going to get close to 6 to 7 years. This is a power lefty. They're hard to find, and lefties usually last longer than righties. When you look at the Yankees as a whole, they're not. They're probably going to have to keep Donaldson because he was horrible last year, and nobody's going to want that contract for another year. They have him for one more year. The guy that really stands out that you can trade him where he could be worth something to a lot of different teams is Gleyber Torres. And Gleyber Torres did not look good in the playoffs. He's been a good playoff hitter really his whole career, but in the ALCS, when the Yankees needed him the most, and the Yankees got the lead against the Astros, I think it was in Game 4, he absolutely choked, and he made a lot of mistakes, defensive errors. This guy went from shortstop to second baseman to shortstop to second baseman. He doesn't know his position, just like Gary Sanchez doesn't know his position. What do the Yankees do? Do they trade him? They've got Pereza. They got Volpe coming up. They have a Cabrera that can play multiple positions. They have a slew of great young players. Do they trade Gleyber Torres this offseason?
I think it happens either this offseason or at some point in the season before the trade deadline. You're at a position where you're the Yankees, where you're simultaneously trying to justify this Judge contract and say we're trying to win now. Yet, as you just mentioned, you have those two prospects. And you're like, we got to get them up to the roster and we got to get them playing on the field. And look, second base, shortstop, you can move guys around, right? If you need, those guys are talented enough where they can figure it out at one of those positions. So I think you probably say, hey, you know what? Let's go into the season with him. If he starts hot, then maybe a couple teams are interested. We sprinkle him out there and we try to bring these guys up. But I don't know. Look, they have to fix basically the entire left side of their infield and their outfield. They need a left fielder. They need third, short. They need to figure everything out for the most part. And they need pitching. And I don't know that they're going to be able to get all of it in the offseason. So I focus on the pitcher. I get a batter. I re-sign a couple guys, Benintendi maybe, something like that. And then I look to trade him during the season. That's probably what I would expect happen. I don't know that there's enough interest right now.
So we mentioned in the segment before you came on that they're right now the favorites for Carlos Rodon. Mm-hmm. Do you see that kind of thing being realistic with the Yankees right at the brink of the luxury tax, or do you see maybe a trade more likely, like with the Brewers pitchers or somebody like that?
Well, that's the thing. Like, if George owned the team, I would say, of course they're getting him. Well, like, what are we even talking about? But with Hal, I don't know what those conversations are with Cashman. It's like, yeah, I need that 9th year. We got to go to 40. All right, well, you're going to have to. Your limit's here for the next free agent you want to go, whether it's Rendon or whether it's someone else. So I don't really have that answer. I think there's a lot of questions surrounding what the Yankees do from here on out in these meetings and elsewhere in the offseason. But again, if they want to win, and some of the moves they've made over the last couple of years, I'm not saying that they're not trying to win. Of course they are. But they aren't necessarily taking the steps that they would have under George to go out and win a World Series. If they want to do that and they want to say, hey, we signed Judge, we're going all in, then you sign that guy. No question about it.
And I agree with you, and I think one way or another, I think the Yankees are going to get him. He's seeking a 6-year deal that says over here 2 days ago. I think the Yankees right now, and right now the Yankees are saying, a lot of people are saying the Yankees are the favorites of getting him. That's what they're saying.
There's a lot of smoke. Yeah,
yes, and usually when you hear that, it means more than likely that could happen. Now
except for Arson Judge and the Giants. That was yes.
Now the Rangers obviously got Jacob deGrom. A lot of Met fans were very upset about this, and now I'm hearing that they're also in on Carlos Rodon. If this happens, are they a contender this year? I know obviously with Simeon, who didn't have a good season last year, they added their star shortstop. And now you add Jacob deGrom and now Carlos Rodon. I mean, you have a pretty good 1-2 punch. You have a really good pitching staff. I mean, this pitching staff's young, but very good. You add these two guys to your pitching staff, and maybe you add a sprinkler here off, with a batter here, a bat or two here. I mean, they could be contender in a division that only has one team, the Astros. Everybody keeps saying Seattle. Seattle has to prove it to me 2 years in a row. I know everybody loves this Castillo kid, but what was it, 2 years ago? In Cincinnati, he was horrible, okay? He looked good one year, he looks bad the next. He looks good one year, he looks bad the next. He had a great year when he was traded to Seattle. We'll see what he does with this new contract. Where do you see this American League going into the season?
I mean, it's the easiest thing to say that I like Houston, and I still do, right? There's just no question about it. They're probably need to come in as the favorites. Regarding the Rangers in particular, I mean, they were 35-ish games back of the Astros last year, and having to play them that frequently. You want to talk about the AL East. I'm not saying the West is comparable in terms of like historically or anything like that, but you have Houston at the top of the division. You have Seattle sitting there. How much better are the Rangers going to get in a win-loss situation, adding those names and hoping they all come together in the same year? You even look at, I go back to the Yankees just because it's my best frame of reference when it comes to baseball. I have slid out of baseball a lot over the last few years. But, you add A-Rod to the team. You don't win in year one. It takes a while to kind of get all those pieces together, figure out how you want to build your lineup, build your rotation, all that type of stuff. So, I do think the Rangers have an opportunity to make drastic improvements, as they should, given the names that they added. Are they going to be a contender right away?
No.
Probably not.